Yeah.
Okay, all right. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. We're really excited to have you here today. First of all, happy Father's Day to all the fathers here. Thank you for celebrating with us this afternoon, with this father as well. If it's your first time here, welcome to Kehila, Kedosha, Janina, the only Greek Romaniot synagogue in the Western Hemisphere. We are an active synagogue. We're open every Shabbat and Jewish holidays for services. We also have a museum upstairs on our second floor, as well as some of the exhibits you see down here. So join us throughout the year. We'd love to see you for services, for all of these educational programs, like today's very special event. We just had last month our biggest event of the year, the Greek Jewish Festival. Thank you to those who were there. We had 10,000 people right outside on Broom Street. It was a lot of fun. But today, we are very, very honored to have with us Elias Messinas, who is an architect, urban planner, researcher, and expert in all things synagogues of Greece. We've known him for many decades, but I believe this is the first major exhibit he's had in America, especially where else to launch it than in the Greek Romaniot Synagogue here in New York. So we're really honored he came all the way from Israel for this event today. We worked over the past 6 months on the exhibit and curating in this event. So you're in for a treat. The exhibit is actually right here in the hallway, so you can take a look afterwards. And we have many of the books that Elias has published available for sale here afterwards. If you want to buy a copy and have him sign it, you can take it home with you and read much more. But we're also honored as well to have representatives from the Consul General of Greece here in New York. Consul Petros Dorizas is with us. So thank you so much for representing the Hellenic Republic. And Elias, among his many, many attributes and accomplishments, he also worked with the ministry in Greece on restoration of many synagogues. So not just research, but actively helping maintain and bring back to life a number of historic synagogues. And as you'll see today, recreations of synagogues that we lost, that we can't even see today, but we will now see for the first time because of his dedicated efforts. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Elias Messinas. I want to also recognize the American Sephardi Federation and the Festival Separad who helped support today's reception and promote it to a broader audience. So please give it up for Elias Messinas.
Okay, good afternoon. For me it's evening, it's about 8 o'clock in the evening, so but it's okay, I lecture at 8 o'clock, so it's okay. Alright, so I'm really excited to be here, thanks for coming. I want to thank, of course, Kedosha, Janina, Andrea, Marcia, and I also want to thank my dear friend Kasorianos, Cliff Russo, for making this trip possible, and of course the Kedosha Janina for making the exhibition and the lecture possible. And thank you for joining. Now I will read a little bit part from the notes because otherwise we're going to be here for about 2 hours. So I think it's a privilege to have the notes so I can control myself. Okay. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a Pride Romaniot, so coming here to Kehila Kedosha Janina, I really feel at home. Here I'll show you some pictures of the family. From my mother's family name is Negrin, from Janina. This is my mom with my aunt. This is my mom, the little one. Now, my youngest daughter, Eden, looks exactly like my mother. And I don't know what's worse, to have your mother as a daughter or your mother as a mother. It's really a challenge. So anyway, but this is my grandfather Elias, I have his name. And this is my mom. And up here it's my grandma. This is my grandma Iftichia. Now my grandma was born in Kehila. Her last name was Forni. And the great-grandmother is Matza from Arta. So we're 3 generations Romaniotes at least. That's what I know. We're probably many more. That's at least what I know. So we're very, I would say, hardcore Romaniotes. But after the war, my mom met my father, and my father was from Messina, the name Messina, from Italy. So here's my grandfather. When he was a little kid, they were very poor, so he was given to a Jewish Turkish person, I think he was a merchant, and he grew him up, he raised him for 7 years. and he was not allowed to cut his hair until he was given back to the family. So this is my grandfather with long hair, and this is the fellow who raised him. And here's my grandfather again with his future wife, Perla, the name of my sister. And that part of the family came from, they left Messina probably in the 15th century. They may have also been Romagnotas, because in Sicily there were ancient Greek communities, so they may have been Romagnotas as well. But they moved to Istanbul, like Constantinople, in the 15th century, and then to Izmirni. And then that's where my grandfather was born at the beginning of the century. And in 1923, after the Greeks they had this catastrophic whatever happened to Izmir, to Izmirni, the whole community was thrown out by the Turks. The Jews, including my grandfather, who were working with the Greeks, left as well because there was no more work in Izmirni. So that's how he came first to Piraeus, and then he moved on to Athens. And other parts of the family went to Buenos Aires, they remained in Izmir, and some also moved to Israel. Now, the exhibition today really brings me back about 30 years, and it closes a circle that was opened in 1993, when I had this dream of creating this exhibition, and here in New York. And now it's really coming true after more than 30 years of research and work. Now, the story starts in 1993. I had just completed my studies at Yale, at the Yale School of Architecture. I lived and worked in Manhattan at the firm Daryl Cannington and Gavin McRae Gibson. And I spent a lot of time sketching in the city. Now, at work, it's really interesting that we had this big project with Winthrop Real Estate Advisors, and my task was to go out to empty office spaces and measure them. So I was measuring space after space for future tenants. And measuring space after space in New York really helped me develop a skill that I previously didn't know, because of the whole methodology of how to do it right. And so during my stay in New York, I networked a lot with Greeks, and I visited Greek clubs. I know, it's on purpose. I didn't have a slide for this. So I didn't plan. Okay? And so, we went to Greek places, ate Greek food, listened to Greek music. It was really great. And one of the events that my friends asked me to go was a Sephardic festival, 1993. I think it was, around April, May, maybe some of you remember it. I don't remember exactly, I cannot really pinpoint it. No, I was totally unaware of what Sephardi is, let alone what Roman it is. I had no idea. But still, I went to that place out of curiosity. And at that event, it was one of those moments that you feel that you align with something, that you really are where you should be, but you don't quite understand what's going on and why you're there. And because the food I tasted like the food of my grandmother, the music I heard was very familiar, and also the lectures really spoke about places that my grandmother spoke about. So it was all really mind-blowing, but I didn't know really what to do with it. My reaction to this culture shock was, because I was an architect, I said, okay, maybe we should do an exhibition on Greek synagogues in New York. And so I had this idea. I had connections with Columbia University, and they were very interested to host it. So I had to make sure that we had the materials to show. So I called up Nikos Stavroulakis, who was at the time the director of the Jewish Museum of Greece in Athens, to ask him if they have any materials to show this exhibition. Nikos was very happy, he was very excited. He said, of course, we have fantastic pictures. We took pictures with Timothy Devini in the 80s, and we have great pictures. And they were published also in 1992 in his book, Jewish Sites in Synagogues in Greece. So there was material. So I asked him, yes, but we want to do an exhibition for architects. So we would like to show plans, floor plans, elevations, sections, etc. And he says, well, we don't have any plans. I said, there are no plans? And he said, we have no plans. Mm-hmm. Now, I was really surprised because, as you know, Greek Jewry suffered in World War II. 87% of the Jews were annihilated, 96% in Thessaloniki. And from 101 synagogues that existed in Greece before the war, very few survived. And my surprise was that no one had taken the time to actually survey what remained, what survived, so that in case chas v'chalila something happens in the future, that at least we had the documentation of. And it was really a cultural heritage, a devastated cultural heritage, really in danger. Okay, because even some of the buildings that still existed were in ruins. So, but I put the idea on hold because I said, okay, I'm here in New York still. And then there was an international conference in Chicago that I went for, of the American Institute of Architects. And then there I met an architect, Alexander Stobazis, with whom we had a very good collaboration later. But I also just picked up Metropolis magazine and just started to go through it. And there I see an article by Sam Gruber, who was associated with the World Monument Fund, who wrote about the restoration of synagogues in Eastern Europe. And I must say that when I read the article, I felt sort of an envy that the article was not written about the Greek synagogues, that it was written about Eastern Europe synagogue. But I felt that something teasing me to actually speak with Sam. And what happened was when I went back to New York, I said, okay, this is New York, everybody has to be in New York, so I called up World Monument Fund and said, I want to speak with Sam Gruber. So they gave me his number. So it was a 212 number. I said, okay, great. So I spoke with Sam, and we still are in touch. And Sam was really excited. He said, you know what, why don't you go to Greece and do the same thing, you know? Why don't you go measure buildings, document buildings? He said, you know, we'll support you, we'll give you, you know, reimburse you for photographs, etc. And so, you know, the idea started to become more real. And eventually what happened was, when I went back to New York, I said, okay, I'm a Greek architect, I'm Jewish, I'm eager to find more about my heritage, and I have a feeling about the importance of this heritage. And probably since nobody has done it, then it looks like I have to do it. So eventually I got on the plane in August 1993 and I went back to Greece. And a few months later, I started the project. I also started, at the same time, my army service in Greece. It was fun because I was stationed in northern Greece, in the Dimotiko. And so when I started the project in Chalkida, because I got a small grant from Minos Mavocha in Greece, and I said, okay, where do I start from? So I said, okay, I start from where the family starts from. So I went to Chalkida, because Arta doesn't have a synagogue, so I went to Chalkida. So that's where it started. And then the next two synagogues were in Xanthi and Komotini. And since I was in the Dimotiko station in the army, I could very easily travel in northern Greece and go to these places and measure and take pictures at the time. This is in Xanthi, and this is in Komotini. The roof had already collapsed. The pictures that Nikos published, the roof was still intact, but when I went, it was already like this. And very soon the buildings were demolished. So during, yes, this is the synagogue in Komotini when it was being demolished. Somebody photographed and sent me the picture. And the next one is the Jewish club in Kabbalah. Yes, in Kabbalah. So in 1993, I started the project of surveying the synagogues of Greece. I surveyed 22 synagogues. It took about 2 years. And then, after I finished this, well, as I was going along, I was taking the work to professors in Greece to show them what I'm doing, and so that I get feedback about methodology, about what to look for, how to research archives, the sources, etc. And everybody was asking me, where are you doing your PhD? And I was saying, I'm not doing a PhD, I'm just doing the surveys. Anyway, somebody was smart enough to tell me, okay, you'll do your PhD, you do it with us. And that's what I did. And I'm glad he did it, because really he put really order to my work, because I then went to Israel, there's a big archive. It's called the Central Archive of the History of the Jewish People in Jerusalem. It's moved now to the National Library, the new library. And I found amazing stuff there. I mean, amazing. I even found the names of synagogues that we didn't know until now. So it was really amazing. And also that put me really into that idea that, you know, you work in an organized manner, you publish, etc. So that was a good move. And what happened is 2 years ago, I also realized that in Rhodes, actually there was a post in the Facebook, and somebody had a picture of Bet Shalom on Shalom, Kedosha Shalom, said, this is the only synagogue in the Rhodes. So I corrected her. I said, no. This is the only functioning synagogue in the Rhodes. There are 2 more synagogues, and actually there are. One is the Rikos, or Tikkun Hatzot, which was on this little street. And I actually surveyed it. The building was sold, and it was supposed to become like a cafeteria, but it stopped. So anyway, I went in, like I used to go in, basically jumping over the walls and getting to the property. Yeah, it was very legal, but I did it anyway. And then there's another building, which is the floor of the Grande Synagogue. And I surveyed it because it was very important, because as you see in Rhodes, there's a tradition of tu echalim, okay? Which is very special for Rhodes, and probably comes from Sardis, from Turkey. So this is something that I've started to research. It's very interesting. And there's another one. It's called the Talmud Torah, but I couldn't go in because it's on the 2nd floor. So that one I haven't surveyed yet. Now, in 1983, coming back to Greece, also another thing happened. I met my wife, Yvette, who's right here. And by the way, this is Mimis Cohen. I don't know if you know him. This is my mom, and this is Yvette's father and her mother. And here we are in Rhodes, actually. So what happened is we had the wedding in 1996, and I said to Yvette, let's go on a honeymoon to the islands. She said, great. So I told her, let's go to Corfu, let's go to Kos, let's go to Rhodes. What happened was, eventually, I ended up measuring the synagogue. And then went to the beach, she went with friends. That was her honeymoon. but she's still with me. So the project, once the material starts to accumulate, and once you have plans, you can build models. So we had an exhibition in 1999 at Yad Vashem, and we built for the first time a reconstruction of the synagogue Beth Shaul from Thessaloniki, which was destroyed by the Nazis. It's one of the 2 or 3 synagogues they bombed. The Nazis themselves exploded the building. And the one was in Voros and 2 in Thessaloniki, but this is one of them. This was a central synagogue. It was a very important building. And also that's part of the exhibition. We had a big postcard and photos from the Holocaust. So it was a very exciting project. And after that, we had more exhibitions. We had in Thessaloniki, in Kavala, in Kastrolia, in the Rekanati Synagogue in Petah Tikva, many different synagogues. And we also had a nice reconstruction of Kastorian. We had it shown with the goggles of VR, so you could see actually the building. It was very exciting. And a lot of publications started to come out because the material starts to accumulate. And what also accumulates was also the experience. So some books were very technical with plans and elevations and text and description, but others were more like describing the process, how I go out there and I find the building and search in the gravel to look at find the floor. And of course it's not me, it's a soldier, it's an architect, a third person, but there's a story there trying to find the traces. And I have to say here, many thanks to the institutions, the people who supported all these publications, or many of them. Vicky Safra helped, and the World Monuments Fund, Ground Foundation, Getty Grant Program, Crest Foundation, and now my publisher, who really still likes me, although the books are, very specific. In Phognomon, it's Safas Kalidarides, who's also a very known commentator about Greek things that have to do with Turkey or with the Middle East. He's a really great guy. Now the last book, actually I have it here, just came out. I got it in my hands yesterday in Athens. I just brought a copy here for the library. And so this one is really a book that really closes this circle of 30 years with all synagogues of Greece. Like here we have about, 70, 80 buildings or 100 buildings, I didn't count them. 400 pages of photographs, text, and architectural plans. So it's really, and I hope very soon will be also in English, but not too soon. It will be probably by the end of the year. Now, in 2015, something also happened. once I started to identify myself with the subject, when the need came, they came to me to restore buildings. And what happened was that in Thessaloniki they have two synagogues, one is Synagogue in Zikaron, and also they have a Jewish museum. Now they're building a new one, the Holocaust Museum. And I did work there also with the team of the interiors. But then they wanted to restore the synagogues because they were already too old and they looked very tired, and the seating was not proper, and also the source of the seating was not appropriate. There's a story about that in the book. I don't want to read it, but you can find it. And so they called me up and they said, "Would you be interested?" I said, "Yes, absolutely." What an architect would want is, to actually work with things that he's got into in such different ways and so deeply. So of course there was the documentation of the building, very detailed floor plans that were done actually in 1995 before the call from David Santiel came. But the material was there, so it was very easy for me to actually take it from there on to restore them, to actually create restoration drawings. And the work was done in a very sensitive way, that we didn't change the building, but we actually changed the way it looks. So if a generation from now said, we don't like what Elias did, 40 years ago, they can go back and repaint the building the way I found it. And I wasn't, of course, alone. There was we had a team of the architects, Dimitris Reidis and Alexandros Kouloukouris, architects in Thessaloniki, and Leonidas, he's an Albanian, amazing painter, and he's done a lot of our work in the synagogues. What we did, we actually created accents for the building. The building, every detail is there. We just created accents of the architectural parts of the building. We also removed stuff. There was a big steps here for the women to see, and we removed that, and we found the old colors. So we actually also use the old colors. This is the exterior. At the top, the two Ten Commandments. These were the original. That was how the original looked like. But at the earthquake of 1978, they fell. So they were not for about, 40, 50 years, they were not there. So, but because I had seen sketches of the architect, and most of the Thessaloniki synagogues had the two Ten Commandments, I was looking for them. So we went up on the roof and we found them. So we brought them back. And also we removed the newer surfaces, like they had like a linoleum finish on the floor. So we removed it and we found these floors, which were amazing. So basically we brought the building back to where it was in many ways. So this is how it looks like. It looks very, very nice. And there was actually Hans Cunho, who passed away unfortunately recently, and he was one of the survivors, and I know him well. And he was at the ceremony of the opening, the rededication, reopening. And I asked him, "Is everything okay?" He said, yes. So if he said it's okay, then it's okay. Yeah, it was very important because, these people lived the building, throughout the years. And this is the second building in Yad Zikaron. What happened here was, the building is fairly new, 1980s, 83, 84. And they had here plaques with the names of synagogues that existed in Thessaloniki over the years. There were many missing, so it was a good opportunity to renew that list. And now we have about 72 synagogues on the list. And also the Echal belonged to the Sarfati synagogue, the Oel Yosef, on Pitakou Kethalito Street in Thessaloniki. And they put it here, they brought it, they managed to salvage it before the synagogue was demolished after the war. But they added to it a lot of pieces in order that they had the door sliding instead of swinging. So they had to add those pieces, and they actually obscured the actual Echal, which was a very historic Echal. So these are all the drawings of the survey in 1995, and this is the Echal cleaned up without all the additions. And that's how actually we did it. And we also added the plaques to become very equal in size, like the windows, so we restore also the symmetry of the building, which didn't exist before. So we did some very fine and sensitive interventions without really altering the building. And these are the interiors of the Jewish Museum. We added a wing and did a store, a museum store, and some exhibition spaces, etc. Now, after these projects, Santiago was very happy, and so he called me up again. He says, "Have you been to Trikala?" I said, "Of course. I measured the building." He said, "Okay." He said, "Go again." He said, "Go again. We have to fix it." I said, "Okay." So I went to Trikala. So I went to Trikala, and what really struck me with Trikala was that the building was not really seen from the street. Here's the sidewalk, it's right here. So in 1961-62, they added those stores in front of the synagogue. And that hit the synagogue, so when you walk on the street, you see the stores, but you don't see the building. And I said, that's not right, you know? So I went back to the community after we had the first, the first discussion about the project. I went back to the community and said, would it be possible maybe to just demolish the first store? Maybe we can see a corner of the building? They said, we don't know because we're using it. They had a whole meeting, they sat among themselves, they argued, etc. So they came back to me and said, you know what, okay, we agree to demolish the store. So okay, can we also demolish the second? So they said, how many stores do you want to demolish? I said, can we get them all down? Eventually they agreed, and so we got everything down. we got everything down, and we basically got the building back, on the street. It's like, you can see this is the reconstruction, the working drawings. We did this project with Petros Koufopoulos, an expert architect on mostly Christian churches from Ionoros. He's amazing in restorations, so we worked together on this. And so we basically restored the building, but we used exactly the finishes that it had before the restoration, so we didn't alter anything. And that's now how it looks like. So you can actually see the synagogue like a monument, on the street. So there was another store that it was original, actually, because it was in the corner, so it didn't bother the synagogue, and it provided a store, but it's now used like a visitor center. So they have like a little museum, like exhibition, etc. So that's how it looks today. Now, this process, this journey of the synagogue has been full of surprises. And in 2022, there was a new turning point in this whole process. There was a discovery that came my way, and that was the architect that was the archive of an architect. His name is Shentov Samuel. He's from Volos. He was born in Volos in 1939, passed away in 2009 in London. He was an architect that he grew up in Volos. He went to the School of Architecture in Thessaloniki after the war, and then he moved to London for his second degree, but then he stayed there. Now, the story with the synagogues was very interesting. That in 1961, February 1961, his professor Nikos Moutsopoulos asked him to prepare a lecture on the Greek synagogues. Moutsopoulos was a professor in Aristotelio, in the Aristotle University, and he was teaching students how to go out on the field and measure buildings. And so then a lot of the drawings by the students, he would publish them in his books. And there was a big argument about that because he never gave credit to the students. But anyway, the drawings were amazing. And now I can see, actually going back, remembering the drawings that I saw in Moutsopoulos' book, that some of the drawings were Shentov Samuel's, okay? The Signor Manolakis villa, which is very known, that was Shentov Samuel's project, and he did some amazing perspectives. It was brilliant. So anyway, so what happened was that he passed away, and his family, his nephew, found a folder with photographs and plans. And he went to two institutions in Greece, Jewish Museum and the Central Board of Jewish Communities, telling them, we have this material, would you like to do something with it? For 2 years, they didn't reply to him. So what happened was, after I published the book, The Synagogue, he sends me an email. That was actually the day of my birthday. It was really weird. So I get this email that says, Mr. Messinas, I see that you are involved with the Synagogues of Greece. My uncle has left a folder with photographs and surveys of Greek synagogues. Would you like to see it? I said, either he's really pulling my leg or he's really, really serious. So I had nothing to lose. I said, send it to me. I'd like to look at it. And I saw it. It was like, I was totally taken aback. It was amazing. So of course, immediately, I met them, and then I went to London to meet his family, and I asked him to look for more materials. I said, there must be more materials, because what he had in his hands was incomplete. So eventually they did. So by the time I arrived to London, they had a folder, and they showed me, well, we found those books with, notebooks with negatives, photograph negatives. There were 2 missing, actually, because the numbers were very accurate. There were 2 missing. I said, where are the 2 others missing? We couldn't find them. Okay. Anyway, the 3 of them had amazing stuff in them. And then I said, there must be more. So his son really kept searching, and they found his, he used to use like calendars, and he used to write like notes in the calendar, what he did the same day. So we have like his own notes about when he went out to expeditions to measure with whom, and it's amazing. And also what the Moutsopoulos would tell the students, so it was really amazing. And then he found this folder, and inside was his lecture, actually, handwritten, with photographs, drawings, everything. It was just brilliant. So this is the kind of stuff we found. It's like really somebody going out, like as if I was dreaming. I was saying, please, 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 somebody 30 years ago, go out and survey something that I haven't seen. And that's it, And then his drawings were just brilliant. And so these are his works, really. He left stuff that there was no way I could see them, because 30 years ago they existed, but after 30 years they were just demolished. So it was really rare stuff. These are his photographs. These are from the negatives. For Kabbalah, this is all Kabbalah. For Kabbalah, we had, up till now, we had 2 pictures. One like this, and one like that. This is all we had of Kabbalah. There was nothing else. And here, he just took pictures of every centimeter of the building. It's just brilliant. So, and then, and some examples of some buildings that he measured, which were really, really invaluable. One was in Volos, which was demolished in 1960 when they built a new synagogue. So he measured the original building and took pictures of the demolition. And this is the digitization. That's the process that I did afterwards. This is in Brahma, a very rare work, because this building, nobody knew about it. We knew there was like a rumor that the Jews started to build a synagogue in the courtyard of the school and nothing else. Now we have exactly what they were doing. Exactly, it's brilliant. And this is the digitization of it. And this is the Motho. We did have some pictures of it from Synagogues and from others, but we never had such a detailed plan. I tried to reconstruct the plan from the ruins that I found, and I was very close, but this is really the exact thing, of course. This is in Patra. We had pictures, but we never had the plan, and we now have it. This is digitized. And this is Kabbalah. He even left a beautiful section of it, and everything is digitized. And also, he left a very interesting and very intriguing sketch, which I had no idea what it was all about. And then I read the description that he had for the exhibition, for the lecture, and I realized that he was actually talking about Kastoria. Now, Kastoria, Panos Tsolakis published a plan of the building in 1994, but he only published the outline of the building. He didn't show any courtyard, and I said it's impossible. A synagogue has a courtyard. It cannot be that this is a synagogue without a courtyard. So eventually there was a courtyard, and I found the exact outline of the courtyard from a survey of the Jewish properties that was done in 1965 or so. And so I had the actual outline, but here he would show that there were 2 entries, entry and entry. There was also a little water fountain. There was a step here. There was like a division of the topography. So he really left a lot of details. And the most important, he's showing the bima, like in Janina, it was raised bima, like in Trikala. And there was another bima in the center, like in Trikala. So there was a 2 bima, like in Trikala. And this is the reconstruction, and the benches were probably built. They were permanent benches like in Janina. So we have all this information that we never had it before. And in my book, Tokal, I actually with all this research I did about St. of Samuel, then I also wrote another book, the third in a trilogy, that where I'm going to cities and then I'm describing what I find, and then I describe what he found. So it's like both of us writing the book or each chapter of what we find with a difference of about 30 years. And in the end of the book, I'm having like a discussion, I'm making it up, but I had so much material that I could reconstruct the character almost, and I got the approval of the family, of course, they read it and it was approved. That I'm having a discussion with him about the project, about the surveys, about his work in Thessaloniki, in England, because I had his resume, so I knew exactly what he did. So I just made him say it himself, but it was all written, I had it. And then I, of course, wrote, why did you do the surveys and all that, and the war, what happened. So it was a very nice, very nice project. I mean, it was really, gave me a lot of inspiration. In 2022, what really led to this book, which is really the closure of all this material that's finally, we have it together, was a project that the Ministry of Culture asked me to do. You can realize here that there was a very interesting case because they also sent me an email. I mean, it was very official, so I didn't think it was a scam, but they write an email and say, we heard a lecture of you in Athens and would like to commission you to do this project. We didn't even have a discussion before, nothing. And I thought they were joking. Anyway, so they, and then they even didn't do a bid for this project, but there was no one to compete for the bid. I mean, I was the only person. It's really also hard for them to run this project, but everything was done legally, of course. I mean, there was no protections. So anyway, so what we did, we added about 270 points on the map, the official Archaeological Registry of Greece, with 270 points of Jewish interest. Mostly synagogues, Jewish clubs, and some private houses, but mostly synagogues. And you can see here the pictures of the project. You can go in and you can get a text and the points on the map. And in Thessaloniki, we added about 70 or 80 points. So you can see, and it's really amazing to see the concentration of Jewish residents in Thessaloniki, and you can realize how many Jews were there. I mean, the city was really, really, outnumbered by far, and they outnumbered any other group. So it was quite amazing, to do this project, and this, of course, gave me also a lot of order in my mind to also do the book, and that's the book. So now we're here at the exhibition, and I'll say a few things about the exhibition, and you understand now where it's coming from. So when you read the text of the exhibition, you understand a little bit more about what you see. We have a short introduction, we have a little bit of history, Ottoman times, modern, Holocaust, and today. And then we describe basically three architectural typologies, three building types, which are the dominant architectural types of the synagogues of Greece. And we can put them basically in that little box. The first one is the Romagnate, what we call the Romagnate. Now, it's not an ancient style, it's an ancient type, but it's associated with the Romagnate, and I'll show you that it's by accident, almost, But anyway, it's very important that it's actually associated with the Romagnates, and you can see that it's bipolar. The bima is raised, and it's on one side, it's on the western side, and the Echad is on the eastern side, facing Jerusalem, east, southeast, etc. The seating, in this case, is parallel to the main axis. So the seating is basically parallel seat of people facing each other when they pray. Also, what's interesting about synagogues, like in Janina, every Jew that prayed in the synagogue has his own seat. You never sit somebody else's seat, It's very important. Now, the Sephardi, it's, again, the bima is in the center, And that mostly comes from Spain, but not necessarily. It's not the only thing that came from Spain. And it's in the center, the Echad is on the east, and the seating is basically wrapping around the bima. Usually that's a style, that's a type they use in bigger synagogues, and it's also written in the Talmud that in the big synagogue of Alexandria, the bima was in the center so that everybody could hear the prayer. Because if it was in the end, nobody would hear in the center. So it was in the center for very practical reasons. And then we have the Reform type, which in Greece is very important to emphasize that it came as an architectural type, but not as a liturgical type. Okay, the communities, in Greece there is no Reform movement of Reform synagogue. There's a Reform architectural type, but the prayer is in Sephardi or Romanian. And here the Echad and the Bima are adjacent to each other, and everybody's sitting like in parallel seats, like a movie theater or whatever. Okay, let's look at some examples of the Romanian type, the bipolar. We have, of course, Janina, of course, yes. And you can see how it works. Actually, Janina is a very interesting case because it's also a wide synagogue. It's not a linear synagogue, it's a wide synagogue, so it's a very interesting type. And here we can see some examples of the Bima. That's actually from Trikala. This is the one from Kastoria. This is from Janina, and this is from Corfu. Okay, from Corfu, the Italian style. Now, the Corfu one gives us a little bit of a hint that the bipolar type most probably came from Italy, from Venice, especially from Venice, because in Venice, all the synagogues, whether it's the Greca, Apulia, Sephardi, or anything else, it's all bipolar. They didn't have a different layout. They had the same layout, but a different liturgy in the building. So it's very possible, and also you see it's a little raised. This is in Venice again. This is in Jerusalem. They have a reconstruction of the synagogues. So it looks like Venice, which was also it was occupying the Etanisa for many years, and also there was a lot of communication and trade between Western Greece and Italy. So it's very likely that Venice is our source for the Roman synagogue. Now, what is striking though is that Talmud Torah Gadol, the synagogue in Thessaloniki, and also Catalan synagogue that was destroyed in 1890, the fire, and Talmud Torah destroyed in 1917 fire, they were both bipolar. You see there's a bima here, there's a bima here. The bima was not in the center. Now, it's very interesting that Yosef Karo, writes in the Kesef Mishle that in the past, he writes, the synagogues had the bima in the center, but now that they moved out of Spain, they brought with them, they actually rearranged the interior of the synagogue because of the space which is smaller now. They cannot put the bima in the center if there's no space. They put it in the far end so that they can use the space better. And what we also see is that small synagogues in Spain, like this one in Toledo, was bipolar. Okay, so we say that Sephardim brought the central bima from Spain. Yes, it's probably true, and we'll see. But they also brought the bipolar, or the bipolar was interchangeably used whenever the space was small. Okay. Now, this idea, I think, makes a lot of sense, that we're adapting to the need. And here I'm showing an example, I'm jumping, an example of Komotini. In Komotini, there was a synagogue that started as what's called, Professor Krinsky called it the Ottoman square, or the nucleus of the synagogue. And then there are 4 columns and the bima in the center. And that building actually expanded in 3 phases. One phase, it started from the square, the Ottoman square, and then it went one phase to the east, and then another phase that wrapped it around. And what happened was, because the windows that used to be here came further away, there was no more sunlight coming into the center. So they actually built the lantern around 1914, and we know that because there are photographs, not of the synagogue, but of the city, where in some photographs we see the lantern, in some photographs we don't see the lantern. So the lantern was around 1914, and probably that addition was 1914. So what we understand is that the Balkan builders, the SNAF, what's called, they had types of buildings. They had a type for a mosque, they had a type for a synagogue, a type of a church, a type of a house, but they also adapted. If they needed more space, they added more space. If it was too dark, they added a lantern or windows, etc. So it makes sense that a synagogue may also change. We know in our minds that the bima should be in the center, but we don't have space, we put it in the side. We adapt. It's okay. Sephardic type, a bima in the center. We have the example of roads. The Italian synagogue in Thessaloniki was also central. And we have also the example of Bet El in Kehila. And we have some illuminations that show us that in the Agadah of Sarajevo, that the bima is drawn to be in the center and actually to be even raised. So the central bima is also is associated with Spain, but it's not necessarily the only type that was known in Spain. Okay, and the reform type, we see here the example in Thessaloniki. They're close together. And here we have some examples, Monastirioton, Bet Shaul. This is in the Dimotiko. This is not original, it was added in 1924. They did a reconstruction or renovation of the building in 1924. They also expanded the building. So this bima was added at that time probably. And this is in Athens. And so we also speak in the exhibition about the digitization of the work, and here we have the example of course. Basically, it means that we survey the building, then we digitize the drawings, and then of course we can use the digitized drawings for more manipulation, like digital models, VR, etc., whatever we want, and then we can do some renderings, do some shading, and so they become a little more exciting as well. The colors, of course. So we'll see the reconstruction of 3 buildings very quickly. One is in Castoria. The floor plan was created in the same process, digitization, etc. And this process of really getting to the 3D model of the building needed a lot of different pieces to be brought together. One was the plan by Tzolakis, 1994. One was a Jewish property survey in 1965 for the Central Board of Jewish Communities. There was a film by Sam Elias, 1936, that he took a picture of the outside of the synagogue, but it was really very difficult to trace it because his lens was small and the distance was small. So he actually traced the building like this. So what I did, I took screenshots of all his film, and I put them together to start looking at the facade as one piece. Okay, and then with all this material, we can go back and start to digitize that to actually create an elevation that has the proportions correctly, that has the different colors correctly. Of course, it's black and white. We don't know the color, but we know there's a darker color here, and there's a white, lighter color. We have the details for the entrance because the photographs are close. And then we can also reconstruct the interior with the bima, the raised bima and the central bima, like this, and the benches running around. That was in Castoria. The second synagogue in Kavala was made possible thanks to St. Samuel's archive and his photographs. And you can see here the photograph of the bima. So we have exactly the details of the bima, exactly how it was. We have exactly the details of the beams of the synagogue. The dome. The dome was actually not circular, it was elliptical. So we have all these details, the columns, etc. So the first step is, of course, to do the floor plan. And here I was based on the survey by Samuel. And next to the building was the Jewish Club. The Jewish Club, I had surveyed in 1995. Samuel surveyed 1960-61, and so we could actually reconstruct the 2 buildings, one next to each other, for the first time after many, many years. And we have a short video here. Can I show it? It's a very short. Okay, we can see the video. We have a lot of details. There was a little sign here with a little inclination. The windows have two different types of glass. The door up to the courtyard had a wooden trellis inside it, so when the door was open, you wouldn't see through, you would see the trellis. So there was privacy still. There's a lot of detail that we could find, and it's quite exciting when we can put them together. There's the trellis, yeah. We do have exactly the details of the stairs. We have pictures actually from somewhere. There's a trellis that they had for the door. There's the inside. You see the details exactly from the photograph. We have close pictures of the details of the window, so we can get them quite close. The bima. And here it's here's for the women's section. Women would go up from another door, and because of the slope, they were in different levels. Okay, so women, they had two floors, the lower part and the upper part. And this is based on other synagogues that we know. We didn't have any pictures of that, so this is really trying to be close, but it's not totally accurate. So we could see through. And then we have the Jewish club. We have all these. We have enough pictures to exactly, and of course my survey, so we could reconstruct it with all the details. I mean, the details are really accurate of exactly how this used to be. And the door here, the entrance, was very elaborate. This is the interior. This was the big hall of the Jewish club, and they used that as a synagogue after the war. This is where Perachia, I forget his first name, was actually he was holding the prayers and the weddings. Perachia from Thessaloniki, he was in Kabbalah. He used to be one of the tobacco traders, and he was also a cantor, and he was leading the services and the weddings and everything. Oops, no, that's not it. That's it, yes, that's correct. Yeah, the interior pictures we saw. Right, I wasn't sure we're showing the video. And then the third synagogue is the Bet Shaul. You saw the model, so the drawings were already there. The colors were reconstructed thanks to Freddy Bravanel, who is the partner of Sam Berube in Athens. And he, as a child, remembers that his family was praying in Bet Shaul, so he would tell me all the colors of the building that we didn't know. And this is the floor plan. And these are the maps that helped us really reconstruct that we have a very accurate layout of the floor plan. And many pictures from the Kanati archive and from different archives. So it was really easy to somehow reconstruct the building. Here, this is a very rare picture from the archive I think that's from Bet Zvi, or the Central Archives of the Jewish People, that is a homeless family, a Jewish family from the fire of 1917, or the reconstruction of the city center immediately after. And we know it's the synagogue Bet Shaul because we see the corner here of the bima. You see the corner here? Mm-hmm. It's in the corner right here. Okay. So it was really amazing. Actually, there's another synagogue I found like this. That's Keter Torah that they found. It was a synagogue. Everybody's sitting there in the back. There's a echad. So it's quite amazing. And we can see the floor exactly how it was. So it was really helpful. And this is the reconstruction of the synagogue, the interior. Right. So I will just invite you to visit also the site. It's called GreekSynagogues.com, and has a lot of resources, videos, books, and anything you need to know. And if you have any questions, we can have a discussion. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for your presentation. In my travels, I've been to Izmir. In Izmir, there are 5 synagogues that are being restored. One of the synagogues I walked into was definitely a Romaniot synagogue because of the bipolar design. Do you know about that one?
I was in the synagogues in Izmir many years ago. Now they actually restored, I think, 13 of them. Nissim Bekoya, he's in charge of the whole project.
Yes.
And I will meet Nissim in Vienna in November. I've invited him to a panel, so I will be with him, so I'll ask him a question. I don't remember that. I don't remember the bipolar.
Oh, it's definitely, just like Janina.
I'll ask him.
And the second question is, in my travels also, the bima, when you come up, like ours upstairs, there's one way to go up. But in many Sephardic synagogues, there's a left side and a right side. Can you expound on that, the difference?
I haven't found a rule for that. Maybe it has to do with how much space you have. If you have limited space, you do one entrance. If you have more space, you do 2, so they can... Because the truth is, it works also with the Romagnot. Because in the Romagnot, you come in from one side, you wait, the other guy comes up, says a prayer, and then you go out from the other. Maybe it has to do with that, but if they don't have space, they just do one, I guess.
I see.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
So we were in Greece back in October, and we were in Zakynthos and Kefalonia, and we did find a shrine we happened on, a shrine because we stopped by a jewelry store where they're selling crosses, so I spoke to them, they didn't know English, I spoke to them in Greece, I said, do you have this in Zoe? I had a kind. He said, no, but if you're interested, there's a shrine, and it turns out the synagogue on Zakynthos was destroyed by an earthquake in 1953. I'm curious if in your travels you have any pictures of what that synagogue looked like.
No, I don't. What they have now is a courtyard with the 2 tombstones, one for the mayor and one for the Metropolitan, I think.
Yeah, that's what we saw.
Because they were the ones who saved 279 Jews, 79 or 75 from Zakynthos. They were the only Jews saved intact, because in Volos they went with the partisans and in other cities, but there it was all of them. It was amazing. But they are having this into a courtyard. But I think that the synagogue in Zakynthos was probably very close to the one in Corfu. It was probably an Italian-influenced synagogue, 2 stories, with the first story like a Jewish room, like a Jewish club, second story being the synagogue. Okay, but I don't have any drawings of it, and I would assume that it was probably bipolar. It was Venetian, probably. Yeah.
How many functional synagogues are
Functioning? Good question. I think 12. I have it here. I have a list. 1 second. Okay. Right. Now we have 16. There used to be, first of all, there used to be 101 synagogues in 31 communities. Today we have 16 in 12 cities. We have 5 synagogues with other uses. We have 4 archaeological sites, and we have 4 ruins of synagogues. This is the status of today. Right? Yeah.
My question is kind of related. From visiting synagogues that are inactive but very well restored, my question for you is, what is the best use of those spaces? Like, what's a creative way to preserve them? What should they be used for? Should they be museums? Should they just be there? It's sort of, I find that very difficult when I visit these.
Yeah, it's a good question. Velia, for example, it's like a visiting historic site. And it has services whenever, I think they have once a year or something, a service that they come from Thessaloniki, they bring a scroll and they have a service. We don't have others like this. There were 2 synagogues in Rhodes, which were not actually, yes, 2 synagogues, Talmud Torah and Chatzot, but they were sold. And one, they wanted to do it like a cafeteria. And the neighbors stopped them. Which means that if they hadn't stopped them, there would be a synagogue turned into a cafeteria today. I don't know what to do with such a building, really. I mean, in Kos, the mayor has used it as a cultural center. It works very nicely. And now that we turn it back into a synagogue or a dual use as a synagogue, it was done. It was possible. If it was a cafeteria, we wouldn't be able to do it a synagogue again. So, you know, in different times, there are different needs and different decisions. When different people decided. In the between 1960s and 1990s, the best thing to do with the synagogue that was in a remote town was to demolish it, collect the money, and give it to a community that exists to be, you know, to the school, to build whatever you need. Later, within that context, in 1980s, the municipality realized that they wanted to keep Kos, so they bought it. Actually, the municipality bought the synagogue, which is very rare. In Xanthi, the municipality also wanted to buy it, but the bid was low, so the central board characterized the building. It was characterized as a monument, did characterize the building, and then sold it to a contractor, and he demolished it. I mean, it could have been saved, you know, if they had done the same thing like in Kos. We could have also Xanthi at the moment, but we don't. So it's very difficult to function, you know, to get one. There was not one thing going on here, and no synagogue remained. You know, synagogues were always in a really prime real estate. They were in the center of the city, and there were big sites because they had the synagogue and the courtyard. So I guess they became real estate eventually. Some point.
What is the Jewish population in Greece today?
There are about 5,000, 3,500 in Athens, 950 in Thessaloniki, about 400 in Lysa, and small groups of about 40 people in Trikala, Janina, etc. Yes.
Could you speak to the history? I know there's more than one synagogue in Janina today, but the one that stands today, could you speak about the history of that synagogue?
In Janina?
In Janina, yes.
It's an Ottoman building, 1826 was built. I said what's unique is that it's a broad house building. It's not a, you know, long. It's actually broad house. I couldn't show the plan or give the plan here somewhere. Find the plan. It's see. Got it? Yeah. Now, there's a lot of questions about this building. One question is, where is its front facade? Okay, it does not have a front facade like a monumental synagogue. And it also doesn't stand on the street like a monumental synagogue because it's an early synagogue. Synagogues start to stand on the street after 1870s. Okay, with the Tanzimat reformations, and the Jews got more rights, they could expose their buildings, etc. After then, the buildings were behind walls, behind the courtyard, and they were protected. And the question is, today we enter from the gate over here, and then we walk the narrow path by the walls, and we reach the nice, you know, the triangular gate with the arch, and we enter from there, and we enter from a wooden booth, and we come into the building from the side here. Okay, and this has been, as long as most people remember, this is the entrance to the synagogue. But the entrance to the synagogue was from here. Okay, and the entrance to the synagogue, you have to go around, and to come here to another gate, which is really nice, it's with a big arch, and then you come in to the courtyard, and to your right, there's a ruin. That ruin was the minyan. That's where the Jews used to pray on a daily basis. They didn't open the big synagogue, they had a smaller room, they would do the minyan there, and they would go to work. And then, to come in, you would continue with a nice flight of half-round stairs, which is very known in the Ottoman times. They actually had the same similar type of stairs in Veria. In Veria they have these semicircular stairs, okay? You can also find them in a lot of churches, even in Castorian. So it's a very known, very dramatic way to enter a building. So this part has all the characteristics to be the front entrance of the building, and not here, of course. This is the backyard. Here is the fountain, here's the courtyard, and this is the main entrance. And then before you come in, if you go to your right and you go around in the courtyard, you find the stairs. There's the stairs that will lead out to the women's section. Okay? And then you go up, and it used to be the women's section that was this part here, and if you come into the building and you look up, you'll see there are arches and trellis, wooden trellis. So the women were up there, okay? And this was the part of the women. You would come in under the part of the women, the men would come in under the part of the women, and they would come here and they would go and sit in their own places. But the entrance was here. But for many years, they stopped using it, I don't know why, and everybody who remembers, they think the entrance was this always, but it's not. This was the entrance, and that became the Genizah. Okay? There's a little booth there with doors, and they used to throw all the old scriptures, prayer books, everything was here. That was the Genizah. It's interesting. So not only they didn't use the entrance anymore, but they also made it the Genizah. Okay. But that's the architecture. I mean, the architecture of the building is totally different of the way it's now. But yes.
Do you know how many synagogues were in Janina altogether?
We know of two at least. The other one was on Yosef Elias Street. It used to be called Max Nordau. It was at the end of the street, so it was blocking the street. And then when they demolished it, they cut the street to get even to the lake. And next to it, there was the school, the Alliance School. So if you actually go into the registry, the Archaeological Registry, you'll find we have even the footprint of the actual sites next to each other, the school and the synagogue. Yeah. And the synagogue was roughly the same size, roughly. But it was more elaborate, it was more Italian style, and was destroyed in the war. This was not destroyed, by the way, because the library, what's it called? Forget the name of it. But the library actually used it as a place. I don't know if they used it as a library or as a storage for books, but they used it, and so they saved it. Yes.
So you mentioned earlier the importance for a courtyard. Is that for instance, sukkah?
Sukkah. Yeah. Also, they had the fountain. So in case of difficulties, they would use it as also as a protective space. Yeah. In Veria actually, in Veria there is a big courtyard. You come in, you have two gates in Veria, in Barbuta. Okay, Barbuta is built like a fortress. The houses are connected to each other. There's the houses are creating like a wall around the courtyard. It's not geometric. It's kind of skewed, but it has a gate that's facing the street, the city, and another gate that was going to the river. And there was a bridge. Now, the houses that were built around the courtyard, in the basement, they had a door that opened from house to house. And they could actually flee from the basement, from house to house, and get out to the side of the river. Okay? So it was really working like a fortress. Yeah. Yes.
Is there any way to determine which families went to which synagogue?
Good question. No, I don't have this answer. No, my family was. They were actually living in Max Nordau and Kuduriotu, but they were coming to the old synagogue, not to the new one, which was closer, but they were coming to this one. Yeah. Yes.
I'm not saying this because I know you for almost 40 years, but it's such a great fortune to have someone like you do a scientific study, someone with the sensitivities and the meraki and the way to find that information and personally measure it and document it. So thank you for this. you know anything about the synagogue in Delos? The place where it's prescribed as a synagogue? There was a marble throne-looking seat that is like the seat of Moses. Do you have any idea about this place?
Now, ancient synagogues, it's a little more complicated. We have two definite ancient synagogues from the 4th century CE. One in Egina, 350, dated by the date of the mosaic. And another one found by accident, 2018, in Chios. They were digging for a parking lot and they found actually a synagogue. It was amazing. And it's taken them too long to publish it because it's very important. And they had also Greeks inscriptions about the donors, about the Synagogues who found the donations, etc. So these two buildings are for sure, we know they're synagogues and we know they're dated the 4th century until the 7th century. They say that 7th century there was a new law in the Byzantine times that allowed the destruction of synagogues if it was in proximity to a church. And so it's very possible that both were destroyed at that time because there was a cemetery nearby. Now, there are another two buildings that we are supposing that they are synagogues. One is in Athens, and it's called the Mitron. It's under the Thesio. Where's the Thesio? The Ephistio, actually. It's the temple. Underneath, there was a building that was also the archives of the city, etc. And they turned it at some point, it looks into a synagogue. Why they say it's a synagogue? Because they found a little inscription of a menorah that was found nearby, and it looks like it belonged to the building. And the orientation could work, so it could be a synagogue. Now, in Delos, it's even more complicated, because I think they did find, they found Theos Ipsistos, I think they found an inscription that says Theos Ipsistos, which means how do you say, God the Almighty. And then they had the throne of Moses, which came from a nearby stadium, but still, they used to use pieces from other buildings, so that doesn't surprise us. But they're not sure if it was a synagogue, if it was a Posidonians, if it was some other sect that used it, an early Jewish sect, because that's from the 1st century BC. So it's even like 4 centuries, 5 centuries before even Egina. So the building type of the synagogue, we don't have examples to compare or to say, it's very difficult. So that's what's been published. It's published that it seems to be a synagogue, and everybody believes it's a synagogue. It was a French excavation. Everybody believes it's a synagogue. We agree with that. There's no argument. I mean, in Athens, it's by the American School of the Classical Studies. There's no argument there. I mean, we cannot argue because we don't have enough material to compare. So we accept it. It's accepted.
I think we're going to hold the questions for now. You can still come up. Elias will be here. We have 4 of his amazing publications, his books here available for purchase. I want to just thank Elias again for his decades of research. We're not only blessed with it, with the exhibit, which you can look at right now, but for posterity, for the Jewish community in Greece, for all Jewry. It's a treasure that we really appreciate. So, Hazak Baruch, thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, the books, I just tell you what the books are about, so if you're interested, so you know what